mutable selves, personality and situations. Why do some people seem consistent in their behavior across all situations, while others adapt their self-presentation like chameleons, appearing different depending on the context? How do you behave? Do you act somberly at funerals and enthusiastically at barbecues, or do your behaviors sometimes clash with the setting? Do these tendencies impact our success and happiness? This chapter explores these questions. First, consider taking the self-monitoring (SM) scale below, or at least reviewing the items. Despite the name, the SM scale does not involve anything inappropriate. SM scale items or self-monitoring. I find it hard to imitate the behavior of other people. At parties and social gatherings, I do not attempt to do or say things that others will like. I can only argue for ideas which I already believe. I can make impromptu speeches even on topics about which I have almost no information. I guess I put on a show to impress or entertain people. I would probably make a good actor. In groups of people, I am rarely the center of attention. In different situations and with different people, I often act like very different persons. I am not particularly good at making other people like me. I'm not always the person I appear to be. I would not change my opinions, or the way I do things, in order to please someone else or win their favor. I have considered being an entertainer. I have never been good at games like charades or improvisational acting. I have trouble changing my behavior to suit different people and different situations. At a party, I let others keep the jokes and stories going. I feel a bit awkward in company and do not show up quite as well as I should. I can look anyone in the eye and tell a lie with a straight face, if for a right end. I may deceive people by being friendly when I really dislike them. The SM scale measures self-monitoring. High self-monitors, HSMs, are conscious of how others perceive them and adjust their behavior to align with the norms and expectations of the situation. Low self-monitors, LSMs, are less concerned with external perception and are guided by their internal traits and values, regardless of the situation. Understanding SM scores provides valuable insights into personality and well-being. Is it better to communicate with complete honesty or with subtlety in relationships? Is professional success achieved by carefully adapting to social situations, or by being authentic? Your SM score can help answer these questions. Imagine I'm standing in front of you. Please write the letter Q on your forehead with your finger. Did you draw the tail on the right or left side from your perspective? This may indicate whether you are a high or low self-monitor. And if you drew a different letter out of defiance, that's perfectly fine too. Personality, situations, and a pinch of salt. Before discussing self-monitoring, let's consider some background. In 1968, Walter Mischel's personality and assessment challenged the traditional view of personality. He argued that the idea of fixed traits that dictate behavior across situations was flawed. His analysis suggested that behavior is better explained by social cognitive factors, the situations we encounter and how we process them. This sparked a debate between personality psychologists defending trait-based perspectives and social psychologists advocating for situationism. This debate led to significant advancements in both fields. The prevailing conclusion is that behavior results from the interaction between personality traits and the situation. Extroverts and introverts gravitate towards different environments. Another perspective focuses on individuals' actions, their projects and tasks. Studying these pursuits allows psychologists to integrate the strengths of both personality and social psychological analyses, which is my own approach, discussed in the final chapters. Mark Snyder, the creator of the SM scale, proposed that LSMs are guided by their traits, while HSMs are guided by the situation. This distinction is valuable for understanding diverse tendencies and preferences, even seemingly trivial ones, such as how we salt our food. Imagine taking a bite of steak. Do you taste it before adding salt? Snyder's research found that HSMs were more likely to taste the steak first, while LSMs were more likely to salt it beforehand or not at all. It's as if LSMs have a strong sense of their preference for salt and act accordingly, while HSMs need to assess the situation, the flavor of the steak, before adding salt. According to Snyder, this reflects LSM's reliance on their internal preferences rather than the external situation. Extending the food metaphor, How do self-monitoring dispositions affect how we perceive ourselves? Are we like onions or avocados? HSMs tend to list publicly visible aspects of themselves, like physical features, status, and roles. LSMs are more likely to list internal attributes, such as values, preferences, or Big Five personality traits. Self-concepts of HSMs are more like onions with layers that reveal no substantial self. Perhaps your co-worker Elizabeth is like that. You are never really sure where she's at, nor, you worry, is she. Her self is mutable and differentiates into many subselves. There is no Elizabethan essence to Elizabeth. Conversely, LSMs are more like avocados. When you dig down you discover a pit, a firm core that is invariant. Maybe your friend Doug is an LSM. Doug is always Doug. He never plays with being Dougie the whimsical. He doesn't do Douglas the serious. He's just plain Doug. And with him you know what you are going to get. His core is solid and his self is immutable. Some might call it rigid. In the previous chapter we talked about how individuals can adopt free traits to help advance core projects that matter to them even when it means acting in ways that are discrepant with their biogenic selves. HSMs should be particularly adept at such acting out of character, whereas LSMs are more likely to be puzzled as to why they should act that way at all. Orchestrating the situation. Highly self-monitoring individuals, HSMs, being attuned to situational cues, prioritize understanding the nature of upcoming situations. Clearly defined situational expectations are particularly important to them. This was highlighted in a study where students chose whether to participate in a situation requiring them to act extrovert. HSMs were more likely to participate when the situation was clearly defined, regardless of their own level of extroversion. In contrast, low self-monitoring individuals, LSMs, base their decisions on their inherent personality. LSM extroverts readily participated. Furthermore, when asked how to make the situation more appealing, HSMs sought to clarify guidelines for conduct, while LSMs aim to align the situation with their introverted or extrovert tendencies. The allure of Google. This research suggests that HSMs may be particularly fond of Google, as it allows them to thoroughly research situations beforehand, gaining clarity and reducing uncertainty. For example, job applicants typically research the company they hope to join. However, HSMs often delve deeper, researching interviewers' backgrounds, education, hobbies, and social networks. This allows them to tailor the conversation to create connections, potentially saying something like, Mr. Thompson, that sounds like a question a sociology graduate from Brandis would ask. However, this behavior can be perceived as intrusive, especially if the interviewer is an LSM and attended a different university. LSMs, on the other hand, feel less pressure to carefully manage their appearance, speech, or behavior because they naturally rely on their own traits, preferences, and beliefs. HSMs, as mentioned, value clarity and often find it stressful to attend events without a clear script or guidelines for appropriate behavior. Imagine a colleague inviting you to a dinner party on short notice. An LSM's decision would likely depend on their relationship with the inviter. An HSM, however, would want to know who else is attending, the dress code, the duration, whether they should bring something, and the party's purpose. Unfortunately for HSMs, these questions are not easily answered by a quick Google search. The unexpected visit. Consider another scenario. Your research assistants unexpectedly arrive to examine your living space. How would you react in the limited time before they enter? LSMs are likely unfazed, as their home reflects their personality and preferences, and they feel no need to alter it. HSMs, however, would likely feel perplexed and try to tidy up or rearrange the room to create a desired impression. For an HSM, a nightmare scenario would be an unannounced visit from a current boyfriend, past boyfriend, third-grade teacher, divorced parents, would welcome everyone without hesitation. Self-monitoring and activity partners. In relationships, HSMs demonstrate a strong sensitivity to the compatibility between the situation and their choice of friends or partners. Imagine choosing a friend to accompany you to a football tailgate party in Alabama and an after-the-ballet soiree in New York City. You have two friends, a University of Alabama fan knowledgeable about beer and football, and a cellist in New York City who is dating a Juilliard student. HSMs, and likely even LSMs if prompted, could easily identify which friend is more suitable for each event. However, let's complicate it. You prefer the football fan as a friend. Would this influence your choice of companions? Research suggests that LSMs would choose the football fan for both events, while HSMs would select the appropriate person for each event. The thought of bringing a crimson-faced football enthusiast to a sophisticated soiree would unsettle HSMs, as would bringing a cerebral cellist to a beer tent. LSMs, however, prioritize personal preference. These differences in self-monitoring can lead to interpersonal friction, especially in romantic relationships. Romantic relationships, commitment and flexibility. Romantic and intimate relationships present even greater interpersonal challenges than choosing activity partners. When evaluating potential partners, high self-monitors, HSMs, prioritize physical appearance and social status cues, focusing on photographs, while low self-monitors, LSMs, emphasize personality and values, spending more time on biographical information. This difference in focus extends to relationship stability. LSMs tend to have more enduring relationships and are less prone to divorce or infidelity compared to HSMs. HSMs, on the other hand, exhibit greater flexibility in their romantic interests, a trait that may be viewed negatively by their LSM partners. While this flexibility allows them to readily adapt to different situations, it can also lead to a perceived lack of constancy, potentially causing unease. It is important to note that not all HSMs are disloyal. Their adaptability simply means they readily adopt behaviors that suit the situation, which can sometimes appear inconsistent, especially from an LSM perspective. This aligns with William James's idea of having multiple social selves, a concept that applies more strongly to HSMs. LSMs, in contrast, possess a more unified sense of self that resists fragmentation into specialized roles. Differences in self-monitoring can be a major source of frustration in relationships. HSMs may perceive their behavior as socially appropriate, while LSMs may view it as fake. This often surfaces during family gatherings where HSMs adapt their behavior to different relatives, while LSMs maintain a consistent demeanor. This can lead to LSMs questioning the authenticity of their partner's affections, while HSMs may criticize their partner's inflexibility and perceived insensitivity. Commitment, success, and organizational life. HSMs often experience greater occupational success than LSMs. They are more likely to emerge as leaders in work groups and receive higher performance ratings in management positions that require navigating diverse roles and social cues. HSMs also demonstrate nuanced skills in managing perceptions of failure. When a project fails, they are more likely to rationalize their actions and control the information flow, potentially deflecting blame. LSMs, with their straightforward approach, may receive more criticism for similar failures. While some may admire this honesty, it doesn't always translate to smooth workplace interactions. In conflict situations, LSMs tend to be forceful and one-sided, while HSMs prefer compromise and collaboration. A longitudinal study on MBA graduates, "Do Chameleons Get Ahead?" The effects of self-monitoring on managerial careers revealed that HSMs experienced faster career progression over 5 years, achieving more promotions through job changes and relocations. Even within the same company, HSMs received more promotions. One contributing factor is that HSMs strategically present themselves as ready for the next level of management. LSMs, on the other hand, focus more on organizational commitment and less on crafting a promotion-oriented image. However, both strategies have potential drawbacks. LSMs may be perceived as lacking awareness of the group's desired image, while HSMs risk appearing presumptuous or ostentatious. Interestingly, HSMs tend to prefer evaluations from their bosses over peer evaluations. In essence, HSMs approach their organizations with a similar flexible and non-committal attitude as they do their romantic partners. While LSMs cultivate a few strong friendships within their work group, HSMs focus on building a broader network, often connecting individuals who would otherwise remain isolated. Self-monitoring ability. Are you aware? Do you have the capability to act in a certain way, despite your usual behavior style? The idea of personality as a skill rather than a disposition has not been explored extensively in academic psychology. However, Research examining this possibility can be very enlightening. In this study, fraternity members were asked to view two thematic apperception tests, TAT, cards and describe what was happening in the scene. One of the cards typically elicits moderate levels of hostility themes, while the other elicits moderate levels of sexual responses. Immediately after, they were asked to write stories with specific themes as part of a testing the limits procedure. Specifically, they were asked to write the most hostile story and the sexiest story they could. Here are two fraternity brothers' responses to the prompt to write the sexiest story they were capable of. Story 1. Martin leaned over her shoulder, and while appearing to look at her face, he was actually viewing the bulge at her chest. He was suddenly overwhelmed with desire, wanting to touch and caress her body. His hands wanted to roam, to enter secret places, to weave through pubic hairs. But his mouth and tongue also desired to taste her skin. Suddenly, he seized her and she let out a moan deep in her throat, half passionate, half terrified. But she let him continue, she wanted it. She quickly unbuttoned and his hands wormed into the opening. He pulled her to him, waiting and trying to touch her all over as her dress fell. "Do you want me to touch you too?" she pleaded. "Yes, yes." "Here?" "Yes." "And here?" "Yes, yes." Story 2. The young woman has been living with another man for several weeks. Now she is pregnant and has come to her father for help. The old man is shocked since he thought his daughter was away at school. But he advises his daughter not to marry her lover if he does not truly love her. He is not a prudish man and understands that these things can happen. He sees nothing wrong in keeping the child when it is born, even though the mother is unmarried. It is clear that these two individuals, regardless of their writing talent or moral dispositions, have very different capacities to create steamy narratives. The writer of Story 1 has no trouble engaging with the domain of erotica. The writer of Story 2, despite being given instructions to be as sexy as possible, wrote something that was unlikely to provoke thoughts of passion. This raises the question of whether high and low self-monitors differ in both the disposition and the ability to shift their self-expressions to fit the situation. A low self-monitor may lack both the disposition and the ability to make those shifts. However, there is little empirical work to support these distinctions. It is important to consider that the low self-monitor who seems uninterested in presenting a different self to different audiences may actually want to do so but lacks the skill. Alternatively, they may have the same capacities as a high self-monitor but simply choose not to display it in their regular environments. Although little research has been done on this topic with high and low self-monitors, one study found that self-monitoring orientation predicted performance skills. Participants were asked to act out spontaneous comedic sketches in homogeneous groups of high and low self-monitors. The high self-monitors were better able to perform than the low self-monitors, according to their own evaluations and those of independent judges. It appears that high self-monitors may not only be better chameleons but also better stand-up performers. Self-monitoring press: the influence of circumstances. It's important to remember that when Mark Snyder introduced the concept of self-monitoring, personality psychology was grappling with the question of whether individual traits or external situations had a stronger influence on everyday behavior. Snyder proposed that self-monitoring was a personality trait that predicted the extent to which individuals would be influenced by situations, a concept explored throughout this chapter. However, the study did not explore whether situations themselves could exert pressure, causing most individuals, regardless of their self-monitoring tendencies, LSMs and HSMs, to behave in a specific manner. Situational press can be used to examine this. The concept was developed by Henry Murray, a founder of personality psychology, to explain the powerful normative pressures that arise across different settings. Murray argued that for every human need, such as affiliation or achievement, there is a corresponding environmental press that can facilitate the expression of that need. Environments that offer numerous opportunities for social interaction provide the right press for individuals high in affiliation. Companies that encourage relentless competition and organize paintball retreats create the appropriate press for those with high achievement needs. But can situations be classified based on the degree to which they require self-monitoring, irrespective of specific needs or traits? Do some environments demand careful monitoring of one's behavior, while others allow individuals to act as they please? I conducted a study with my students to explore this question. Initially, one group of students listed various situations, places, and settings that students might encounter during their university years. While not limited to frequently encountered settings, these were the most common. After eliminating redundant or highly similar settings, a list of 40 was compiled and given to another group of students. These students assessed each situation's self-monitoring press, indicating the extent to which people should closely monitor their conduct in each situation. The situations with the highest self-monitoring press, SM press, were job interview, public speaking, appearing in court, meeting the dean of the university, funeral, giving a seminar in class, serving customers, first date. While some deans were amused to find themselves ranked between court appearances and funerals, the student raters clarified that the appearance was likely perceived as related to disciplinary matters. These situations share a common characteristic: they involve the judgment of others, with personal consequences. The funeral example highlights the intricacies of SM press. While it might not seem to pose an immediate risk of judgment like other situations, it was the setting for a memorable comedic scene in television history. Mary Tyler Moore, a high self-monitor, was horrified by her co-workers' jokes at the funeral of Chuckles the Clown. However, Mary found herself struggling to suppress laughter, while others maintained a somber demeanor. The scene culminates with the minister assuring Mary that it was acceptable to laugh, as that is what Chuckles would have wanted, causing Mary to burst into inconsolable tears. The situations with the lowest SM press were sick at home, watching TV with friends, rock concert, camping alone, talking to a close friend, at the beach, grocery shopping, dinner at McDonald's. These situations are largely informal, making judgment unlikely. Some, such as camping alone and being sick at home, occur in isolated settings, allowing for indiscretions without consequence. Others demonstrate how socializing with friends reduces the need for self-monitoring. The results for McDonald's are interesting because First Date had a high SM press rating. These results suggest that for minimal SM press, a first date at McDonald's might be preferable to a fancy restaurant. In this way, you can enjoy the date without concern for which fork to use. A high self-monitor is more likely to be concerned with such matters. Principled versus pragmatic, exploring values in self-monitoring. Discussions about self-monitoring with my students often sparked intense debates, revealing their central concerns. One instance involved a couple who, after discussing their differing scores on the self-monitoring SM scale, ended their relationship, though likely other factors were involved. It became evident that self-monitoring touches upon fundamental issues of morality, ethics, and values. Snyder and colleagues suggest that low self-monitors, LSMs, tend to act according to principles, while high self-monitors, HSMs, adopt a more pragmatic approach. LSMs, like philosophical Kantians, adhere to their core beliefs even when it's disadvantageous, prioritizing principles above all else. In contrast, HSMs are more utilitarian, adapting their behavior to suit the situation, even if it leads to inconsistencies. However, two important considerations arise when contrasting principled LSMs and pragmatic HSMs. Firstly, the contrast can be misleading, implying that HSMs lack principles and core values. However, their behavior might stem from a commitment to principles like sensitivity to others and adapting to external factors. For example, a boyfriend's kindness to a younger brother might not be manipulative but rather a genuine attempt to connect with someone authentic. Both LSMs and HSMs likely act on principled values, with LSMs valuing consistency and forthrightness, and HSMs prioritizing care and connection. Secondly, both orientations, when taken to extremes, can become unprincipled and imprudent, potentially even pathological. Individuals extremely low in self-monitoring may struggle to adapt to daily life's demands, appearing rigid and maladaptive. While admirable in their constancy, they may face challenges in a complex world requiring flexibility. Similarly, extremely high self-monitors might exhibit signs of pathology. The term aesthetic character disorder describes individuals who are fully engaged in the present moment but can quickly shift to another person or project with opposing values. This prioritization of aesthetics over ethics, an extreme form of HSM, can manifest as a range of manipulative behaviors, from charming individuals who cause unintentional harm to full-blown psychopaths. Adaptive flexibility, a reconsideration of self-monitoring. What insights into personality and well-being have we gained from studying self-monitoring? Similar to the Big Five traits discussed earlier, self-monitoring research sheds light on our friendships, intimate relationships, and career prospects. Once again, we see that well-being is multifaceted and open to interpretation. Its complexity lies in the fact that high or low levels of traits like self-monitoring can simultaneously promote and hinder different aspects of well-being. High self-monitors, HSMs, possess a flexibility and adaptability that can lead to success in social and professional spheres. However, this can also lead to a lack of commitment, a fragmented sense of self, and a reputation for being inauthentic. Conversely, low self-monitors, LSMs, may experience lasting relationships due to their constancy and commitment, but they might struggle to adapt to changing circumstances, potentially hindering their success. The subjective nature of well-being stems from differing opinions on which aspects are most desirable. HSMs likely value flexibility highly, while LSMs may prioritize constancy and forthrightness. Understanding your position on this personality dimension can illuminate the facets of well-being you are likely to experience. Furthermore, a deeper understanding of self-monitoring can help you evaluate the worth and value of these facets in your life. Research on self-monitoring highlights the varying importance HSMs and LSMs place on traits and situations in guiding their behavior. However, I propose a different perspective, reconsidering the assumption that self-monitoring is primarily a trait. The simple dichotomy of high and low self-monitors may obscure the possibility that both modes of self-expression exist within each of us. Perhaps flexible self-monitoring is the most effective approach to navigating daily life. Consider a typical Wednesday with 3 important work meetings, a relaxing evening with family, a supportive call with a friend, and a visit to the vet regarding an incorrect bill. An HSM might approach each situation with a different persona: assertive at work, relaxed at home, empathetic on the phone, and calmly assertive with the vet. According to self-monitoring theory, LSMs would be less likely to exhibit such situational variation. However, despite individual tendencies, most people, even LSMs, likely demonstrate some flexibility in their self-presentation. People are generally aware of societal expectations and adjust their behavior accordingly. Self-monitoring should be evaluated based on its impact on adaptive functioning. Both high and low self-monitoring can be adaptive depending on the context. High self-monitoring is beneficial in diverse environments requiring varied self-presentations, like modern urban living. Conversely, low self-monitoring may be advantageous in traditional, rural communities where consistency is valued. In such environments, HSMs might be perceived as duplicitous and untrustworthy. We will explore the influence of environment on personality and well-being in greater detail later. Finally, if you're still pondering your self-monitoring status based on the Q test, the results suggest that those who drew the tail to the right are more likely LSMs, while those who drew it to the left are more likely HSMs. This is based on the idea that HSMs convey information from the audience's perspective, while LSMs do so from their own. However, interpret this demonstration cautiously. Of course, HSMs will have already adjusted it to their liking. End of Chapter 4.